There's a saying, I think it's an old French saying, "Oh, the good old days when we were oh so miserable." And I think that's a really funny quote because you know how that is, right? How we have these things in our life that at the time are fucking terrible, hell, you know. And our mind has a funny way of altering history so that 5, 10 years later we'll always tell that story kind of laughing or chuckling and not see it as such a bad and horrific time as when we were experiencing it. You know, oh, dude, remember then you did this and then you did that? Of course, at the time, it fucking sucked, right? Remember the good old days when we were oh so miserable? Well, not that it was that bad, but looking back at a point that a lot of you who are awake may remember or not remember, and I always look at kind of like the different levels of people who are awake, and I'm glad to say that I was a part of, and I hope you were a part of, what I would call the 2011 class of Elenin, the comet Elenin. Now, for those of you who don't know about Elenin, and even those who do, give me a minute here to basically try to refresh your memories and also show you some things that I don't think anyone else has really done, which is look in the rear view and look back at that incident. Because it's always stuck out in my mind as being a very, very unusual and telling incident. Not just, I mean, to be honest with you, if you take it at face value, it basically says straight up anything that you look at or try to figure out, try to put the numbers together and try to decipher, whether it be the Bible or it be if you're pregnant, is a waste of time. But I think the lessons go a lot more deeper and vast than that. But the lessons that we learned as a group, you know, because some people before and after us, they don't remember anything about that Elenin thing, or they maybe heard of it. But those of us who kind of got sucked into following what was going on, you know, looking back at it in retrospect, first of all, there was this basic idea, which it's funny, I never really saw it promoted as much as some people said, that this comet Elenin, which had just been recently discovered about a year or two earlier, had so many irregularities about it that there was something wrong with it. People believed it was basically going to hit the planet Earth. Now, right away, we kind of dismissed that, and most people did. I don't remember many people saying for sure at the climax of it, this is going to hit the Earth, we're all going to die. But the thing I want to point out here is much like a weather forecaster who gets teased afterwards because it didn't rain when he swore it would be thunder and lightning and rain all day, is that every single tool that could possibly be used to figure out what is going on with this comet pointed exactly in that direction. And we have incidents such as the name of the comet. Okay, the name of the comet was supposedly, and apparently verifiably, named off of the Russian amateur astronomer. Yeah, I think his name was, Leonid, like Leonid meteor shower, which is funny. Elenin was his last name. And they interviewed this guy on TV. We're getting this on YouTube. This is before YouTube was really corrupted in total lies. 2011, YouTube was still somewhat viable and hadn't been, infiltrated like it is now, where you can't trust anything you see on YouTube. And people are like, well, okay, his name's Elenin. Okay, we have 11-9, Elenin. And this comet, according to NASA, is going to come closest to the Earth exactly on 9/11. It was a big day, 9/11, right? Not only that, of course, it lines up with coming right next to the sun on the day Obama declares that he's going to do that national emergency drill on live TV on all stations. So right away, we've got the negative, as you call conspiracy theorists, because most of them are geniuses, going, wait, there's some problems here. Then you start comparing even the oddball aspects. That the name of the guy who discovered it, the name of the comet, the dates, all these things line up with the movie Deep Impact. The movie. Now, see, people laugh it off, but here's the thing. They were true. They were right. It may have been a coincidence. I'm not saying it wasn't. What I'm saying is the evidence that was being put forth was valid. Okay, we need pictures of this. Go to Google Earth. What happened? Or Google Sky. They have blotched out with like a patch where the comet is in space so we can't see it. Because no one's noticing that none of this is making the news. At this point, the NASA site has crashed because hundreds of thousands of people are inquiring about comet Elenin. That's all they want to know about. Never makes any real news story on the news, which is an interesting point because we can deduce from that. So apparently if a comet looks like it's going to hit the Earth, the media is never going to tell us that. Exactly. What kept normal people from being aware? Because this was not, just rumor talk. It became very apparent that people have evidence of this thing. In fact, the measurements came back on that. Remember when the measurements came back of what comet Elenin was shaped as? And to this day, this still stands. The shape of it was perfect mathematically, even beyond the ways it could be measured from Earth, to make a tetrahedron, which is basically a pyramid, but the bottom side is visible. A four-sided pyramid, perfectly dimensioned, with dimensions that have never been measured of any object in space. It was not a space object, a rock. Okay, now I'm maybe that's not true, but I'm saying to this day that stands as stuff that was coming out as astronomers all around the world. This is the number one topic, and those of us who are truthers were watching this happen. And I mean, I remember to basically put a perfect example on this. I remember where the debunker guys started finally saying, "Okay, we're gonna cover this damn Elenin story in the summer of 2011." And the reaction of one guy goes, "Look, I'm not really following this. I don't subscribe to any of these crazy ideas out there. But I gotta tell you, man, there's something really weird going on with this comet, okay? You've got to listen to me." I think that was the reaction because that was the evidence. All right? And the thing changed and like weird things were going on. Like there was even a flash seen off Saturn. That made the news. This flash hit the comet. The comet then changed size. Of course, they didn't mention that. I mean, we're like, what the fuck, dude? What's happening? This was happening on a daily basis. Those of you who were there, you remember this. I mean, every morning we wake up like, fuck the Wall Street Journal and the news. Like, I don't care what's going on in football. What's up with the comet Elenin? What happened now? Basically, if you had all this evidence in front of you, I don't care who you are, and you hadn't had a block put on you or just basically were still asleep, there is no way in God's great earth you would not have assumed there is something about to happen with this comet. Well, if you look at it from the standpoint of hitting the Earth, remember that NASA thing where it actually showed this comet hitting the Earth just below Alaska. What was creepy about that day that it said it would and it did not was I remember there was a major like 8.9 quake at the exact epicenter of where they said the comet would hit. So that there were weird things like that happening here. People didn't know what the fuck was happening. But looking back in retrospect, the evidence was there. This wasn't a case of you guys were all crazy. You thought that this was going to happen and that was going to happen. No one really ever said, "Hey, it's going to hit the planet," that I knew. It turned into a mystical event. Like, no one's ever seen anything like this. We were like in our own little world of valid facts that we could, to this day, bring forth, slap down on the table, and say, look at these numbers, add them up, look at these events, add them up. There's no way within the first few lines you would say this is just a coincidence. But it was? Well, that's what I want to look at. So if we look at it from the standpoint of nothing happened, that it didn't hit the planet, that's amazing. Why? Well, not that it was supposed to hit the planet, the trajectory and all that never was that, but something major was going on here. This was clearly reflected in everything around us. And we never saw any visible sign of it passing, except knowing through the telescope. So maybe something did happen. Maybe it created some different shift in consciousness or something like that. Yeah, that's probably more along the lines because it was something. But the one thing it taught me was that no matter how much evidence you have in front of you, especially evidence we as human beings use, that something is going to happen. It's not a case of, well, there could be a missing link that you haven't looked at that could change everything. It's more like, no. Nothing can change at this point. That we've double, triple, quadruple checked the math. Everyone has. We've all come to the same solutions. And nothing happened. How do you explain that? You don't. You can't explain it. It taught me that there could be elements involved in these events that no matter how good your math is, or that you know of, there's always that hand that could, whoa, look at that, magic. What are we all tripping on? That's easy to say now, and it's easy for other people to say, oh, you guys are all crazy when you're worried about that thing. No, I don't. There's a lot of other events I would say that's the case. That you can look back at it and say, dude, you guys got your math so fucked up. Dude, who was your source of information for this, for that? This was a case of, man, everyone, even people at NASA, were fucking like shook up. And really nothing came of it, at least on the visible level, like we thought, like we were worried about end of the world, doom and gloom shit. In fact, from that event on, I could say that I definitely turned away from this idea that every sign, no matter how obvious, was somehow or another the end of the world. The Armageddon fire, thing happening. That's when I knew the Mayan prophecy was probably accurate, but that it was not going to be some giant cataclysmic end, that it was going to be some metaphoric end of the world shit, and that's exactly what it was. It was a metaphoric end of time, which is what the Mayan prophecy said. And that's, of course, right when people, boom, started seeing 11:11, 2:22, 12:12 on clocks. Right after the Mayan end of time, time changed. As McKenna said, time became non-linear. Some people thought that was going to mean time travel had been invented that day. No one ever has the right answer. But whether it's good or bad, one thing that Elenin taught everybody was, I don't care if it looks like the meteorite's about to impact your house. Until it actually does, there is always that element of a miracle.